Hello and welcome back to another Warcraft guide. This time it's going to be for the Kor'kron Dark Shaman encounter on normal difficulty. Now this is quite the fight in terms of the number of mechanics and, well, it's really just the sort of thing that once all your raid members get the mechanics, it should be an easy kill. The bosses start off rather simple, however as the fight goes on, the bosses gain more abilities, eventually getting to the point where it's a very hectic fight. You'll deal with 2 bosses and 2 adds. The bosses are called Jerome and Cardis. And there's also 2 wolf adds called Darkfang and Bloodclaw. The adds aren't a problem because they're just killed at the start and really they just don't feature really at all in the fight. Now let's talk about the bosses. So the thing about these is that they get new abilities at 85, 65 and 50%. And finally at 25% they will get Bloodlust, which increases their damage done and their haste by 25%. Now let's talk about Jerome in specific. So his basic ability is called Froststorm Strike. This will deal 325k damage to the tank, well something like that, and applies a stacking debuff that increases damage taken from Froststorm Strike by 25%, and this needs to be swapped out of. At 80% he will do Toxic Mist. This is a 30-second dot which does damage every 3 seconds and applies a debuff which increases damage taken by Toxic Mist. This can't be dispelled or anything like that, so it pretty much just needs to be healed through. Next, at 65% he gets Foul Stream. This will mark a player and a line is drawn between them and the boss. After a few seconds this will kind of explode, doing high nature damage. The marked person should move to the side of the raid so that it doesn't cause damage to multiple people. And finally at 50% he gets Ashen Wall. This is a wall of elementals that attacks players when they pass through it and does very high damage. The elementals can't be tanked or killed or anything, they're just basically a solid wall. Now, it's probably worth noting that these will kill hunter pets, and they can apparently, I'm not too sure if this has been fixed, but at least in the PTR they were able to crit players which would nearly instant kill you, so really you just don't want to be walking through these if at all possible. Of course, any personal mitigation or something like that is absolutely worth using when you're going through the Ashen Wall. Now next, let's talk about Cardis. So his basic ability is Froststorm Bolt. This will nuke the tank, and that's pretty much it. Now when he hits 85% he will cast Toxic Storm, which is a large whirlwind which will deal damage to players inside it. It's also static. Now this large whirlwind will spawn smaller tornadoes which basically spin around the room and must be avoided. Nothing particularly new and scary here. At 65% he will get Foul Geyser, which will be channeled over 8 seconds. This does damage to players near it, but it also spawns adds which must be killed. They're basically just a bunch of slimes. Now these can't be tanked, so your group must kite them and simply nuke them down. We just nuked them down instead of kiting because we had 3 hunters, all of who had very good gear, so it was pretty easy. Now at 50% he gets Falling Ash. A large red circle will appear on the floor, and after, I think that's about 30 seconds after, a large ball lands on it which will kill anyone inside the circle and do very high, well pretty high, raid-wide damage. Now, for the 2 adds, they do pretty decent damage and they just must be nuked down by DPS at the start of the fight. These will be dead by the time the bosses hit 85% on their shared health pool. Now, let's talk about actually executing the fight, and you know, it's funny, while there are so many mechanics, this really just boils down to you have to learn it. Now, we opted for a method that involved kiting them, so we would, you know, pull the boss way up to the northeast area of the combat area, and then kite it around, basically. Now this meant that we were safe from getting overwhelmed from abilities like Toxic Storm and Ashen Wall, because we could just simply move away from them. Now eventually you will run out of room, which is pretty much a soft enrage, unless your group is very, very good at dealing with mechanics in specific, which, you know, of course, you want as much room to breathe as you can get. Now as far as they go, each raid member must just be aware of every single ability and how to avoid it. And they need to be able to deal with them. For example, if they mess up Foul Stream, they'll get people killed. If they stand in Falling Ash, they'll get people killed. If they walk into Ashen Wall and are too slow getting out of it, they'll get killed. Lots of things like that. Now the bosses are tanked together, so they cleave damage. Cleave damage will help you do more damage, which of course makes sense. And once you get under 25% HP, they will start bloodlusting. Now what Bloodlust does is it gives them, I think it's 25% more haste and damage done. So basically once it hits 25% you just need to nuke them down really fast because things will start to get out of order. Now of course none of the other abilities will change, so it's basically just the last 25% is the hardest 25%. That's also the point where your own group should use Bloodlust and Heroism. So yeah, pretty much tanks, do your swapping between the 2 of them, tank them together. DPS and healers, make sure you are aware of every single ability and just do what you can to survive them. A lot of movement, a lot of not sleeping, actually paying attention to the fight, and you should get a kill. So yeah, that's really it. It's funny, usually my normal guides end up being a lot longer, but this is just one of those guides where you have to give out the different abilities, say basically have to deal with them, because that's it. There's not a massive amount of tips and tricks. In terms of composition, I should probably mention this as well. We went for 3 healers, 2 tanks, 5 DPS, which is pretty much the standard one, I guess. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.